All right, let's do it. Okay, what happened last time when I came to the shop? I think they scheduled me right. Anyway, now, okay, now I got the chance to look over the engine bay and talk to the mechanic, and we reconfirmed the job that's going to be being done. And I showed him a little bit of the issue with the shroud or the cover for the radiator, which he said is fine because there's like a little fix there, and I guess he just needs to re put on the little tab there to get that fixed up. So that's cool. I don't have to do anything with that unless I want to replace the plastic there to refresh it or make it new. I just wanted to mention all the stuff I wanted to have done. I told them, well, it's not priority to do the tune-up stuff. So, ultimately, the belt squeaking is pretty bad. And then, like I said, there's an indentation on the belt. So, the problem of the belts is, like I was telling my old man, shout out to my father if he's listening. He's been watching my videos. He freaks me out because he's like, I was watching your video and ... And I'm like, I didn't think he was watching my YouTube car videos, but apparently that's his new thing. But anyway, my dad is the car guy, and I'll always remember that he prided himself on being able to identify any car on the road, no matter what car it was. He knew almost every single car, and obviously, as they keep making new brands and EVs and all this other stuff, that kind of went away. But it used to be you had a handle on all the different Japanese, American, and European cars. But anyway, so I just got a call now. Fast forward a little bit. I think it's been like an hour or whatever. I just got a call from the shop, and they told me that the rubber on the motor mount was bad, and they want to replace it. I said yes. And so I think that, like my mantra has been, let's fix the stuff that's bad. And I know that people feel like, oh, he can't get a break, he can't cut a break. It's like, no, actually, this is all good that all of these things, issues, problems are being identified and addressed. And this is exactly what I want. What I wouldn't want is I'd be, having the car, driving the car, and then find that there's another issue, vibration, or actually the car felt fine. So the fact that the motor mount is worn out, it's interesting. I didn't sense noise, vibration, or anything, so I think it's going and it's getting bad, and it's gonna get refreshed, and then everything's gonna be great. So that's very interesting. I haven't ever heard anybody online or any owner I've ever heard of or any guys at the meet or on the forums from back in the day talk about the motor mount, although I'm sure there's many threads and stuff like that. I think I'm going to do a little research and just to see what people's experience are. But, obviously the VQ platform, as this engine was famously in 4 vehicles, you could expect that as it gets higher mileage. There's cars that have 160, 170,000 miles, 180,000 miles, and my car has 130,000 miles. So the motor is very balanced, as many Japanese engines are. There doesn't tend to be a lot of vibration, and any of the vibration that comes into the Z is like you're feeling, obviously, the steering very connected to the ground. You're getting a lot of feedback, and then you're feeling the transmission. And if anything, maybe I'm thinking now, okay, because the steering was so smooth, right, and you weren't feeling anything strange, no vibrations or problems. I'm thinking, is this going to make my shifter feel better? Am I going to get less vibration in the shifter due to its connection to the engine? That should be yes, right? That should be vibration dampening. And so maybe that's where I was feeling the most. And I'm just saying, it's a sports car. So if I feel, the engine and transmission working, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all excited about the feeling, right? I'm feeling vibration and movement, and like, that you rev the engine and everything, and I'm shifting and the synchros are good. And I'm like, I'm enjoying the car and the experience. But actually what was happening in this case, the car is a little bit older, and then I was probably feeling a little bit of undue excessive extra vibration in there. So now, if that's going to be smoother, and like I've said in person, now I'm saying it on video, like Nissan's transmissions are so good. Specifically the manual transmissions, and I just love how smooth it is. But at the same time, many describe it as having the beginnings of being, because it has a short shifter installed from the factory, it is a notchy transmission, but they're meaning that in a pleasant, good way. The sportness of it, that you get notch in, right, each gear, and the throws are relatively short. Some guys will do an enhancement to kind of stabilize or to enhance the mounting of the shifter, and they'll do a short shifter too. Some guys like a really super ultra low short shift, and to that point, I think that the short shifter, to just talk about this point, which is not going to have a dedicated video, you can shorten a shifter by using a shift knob that is a low rider shift knob. So as you have the threads on the shifter, you'll realize that the shifter top, the top part of the shifter will come up over the top of the rod as you screw it in, and then there'll be certain different ranges of the top of the shifter, and then more so, and then also the bottom of the shifter, right? So the lower that the shifter rides on the rod, then like you get a lower experience. So the entire shifter, you could either shift upwards, be in the middle, or be downward as in a low position. And I think that that's personally how I like it. How I like it is using a stock shifter and using like a low position shift knob. And I think that gives you a perfect shift knob, and I don't think that you need or want a short shifter. And to the point where somebody said, "Oh, you want to put a short shifter in it to give it a more sporty experience," and I'm like, "No, you don't realize that Nissan already did that, and they're not realizing that as you go to an aftermarket shifter, that can change your experience." So that is a short shifter. Or if you were to tell someone that doesn't know that much about cars or is just inquiring what modifications you've done, technically you kind of have gone to a short shifter by using an aftermarket shift knob that is, in a low position. I think somebody may correct me on that or provide some more knowledge on that in the comments. But that's kind of been my experience, and it's very interesting because you have all kinds of different mental approaches, especially now with some of the imports and some of the racing trends and insights to racing. Like for example, when you're in a race car and your wheel is up there, they're trying to minimize your hand movement from the steering wheel down to the shift knob. So they actually want to try to get the shift knob closer to the steering wheel, and some of that is having a lengthier shift knob. But as they have said, this goes back to the old Toyota Honda days. A lot of guys would literally cut the shift knob, the shift rod, the shifter. They would cut the shifter, but they said that's not necessarily going to give you what you want, because of like the pivot point on the bottom, I guess, where the thing moves like on a ball or whatever, and then there's like a part in the bottom, and there's like a certain amount of leverage and stuff, and certain lengths, like at the bottom part where it connects to the linkage or whatever. So just shortening the top doesn't necessarily give you what you want. So there's a lot into the shifter, but I just think that, but I went into this whole shifter thing when I'm talking about the maintenance that's getting done. So like, when I was like rolling out of the mechanic, I see them taking the sway bar down. They're dropping the oil out. It's up on the lift, as you can see. And then they're ordering that engine mount, or motor mount. And so I'm getting the sense that he wants to do this job fast, and that's great. So it sounds like he wants to finish the job today. So we'll see what happens, if it gets finished or not. But yeah, they told me they would call me. So I think it's gonna get finished today. If not today, then it'll be finished by beginning of the week. I don't think they work Sunday. He might finish it Sunday or Monday, but I think he's finishing it today. And so that's great. And it's been cool just looking at the car more. And I'm really just trying to make sure everything is good on the car. And I kind of told him that today, because of all the missing parts and some of the things that maybe are not recommended to do on the car from the previous owner. So I'm kind of going in there and checking everything, and it's kind of like a methodical, slow process. Today I was in the brake area where the clutch area is. That is the up by the master cylinder for the brakes. Looking in there, there was some reinforcement that was done, which is fine. He wanted the hose not to expand, I guess, on the clutch. So that's fine. I don't know. I don't think it really makes any difference. It's so sporty, the whole experience, when you're putting your foot on the clutch, and the spring is good. And this car, according to the previous owner telling me, and the paperwork that he had to back it up, I think he did like a stage 2 clutch on it. And so it's perfectly fine for the street, and it seems to be very grabby. My first experience was that it was transferring the power down to the wheels because of the clutch material being very in good quality, and the friction being good. And so it would transfer the power down to the tires, and then the tires would get a little bit of a spin. So I was getting a little bit of chirping going on, and that's because cheap tires, A, and B, an excessive amount of camber at the normal ride height. So I want to address the suspension, but that's going to happen in the future. But it's kind of cool. You're driving a sports car and the tires chirp. You're like, oh yeah, fun, cool. But it's like also kind of excessive. It's like, dude, I'm not really showing off. I'm not really like popping the clutch, letting the clutch out really fast. I was just a little unaccustomed to driving the Z after not having my other car for a while. Then I hopped in and I drove it, and I was like, well, I don't want to stall. So instead of going on the low RPM side, I went on a little bit on the higher RPM side. And so that was after that first drive. I think I did that once or twice, and then I never have chipped the tires again. But I was like, okay, well, that was a good test of the clutch material before he told me about details of redoing the clutch. And according to the previous owner, that's interesting. So I think now that story's coming to light, according to my memory, I'm unfolding this story. So I think the first owner was a very sporty, racy guy. And I think what he did, whatever he did, some of this stuff, now that I'm starting to think about it, I'm starting to think about this. I'm saying, you know what? Maybe it wasn't the previous owner that didn't do some of these modifications and make the car racy and try to make the car as good as possible, according to what he thought, right? I actually think it might have been the previous owner, the first owner, the previous owner to the previous owner. The previous owner was just enjoying the car, but I think the fact that it needed maintenance and, probably needed, if I were to be, it's kind of interesting. Like, the car looks nice when it's slammed, lowered very, very much, but it's like not necessarily the best ride. experience, and it's not necessarily the best for enjoyment of the car, like going around town, like street stuff. Like, so that's maybe some of the maybe some of it is just the ownership of the car being too difficult, on top of needing stuff. And so if you don't have money for the maintenance, you don't have money to put expensive parts in the car to make it nicer, right? Like suspension. So I think that's been the common theme of the previous owner. And he wanted to get the money out of it by selling the car, right? But the story of the first owner before that is that he wanted to make the car very racy, and I think he put a stage 3 clutch in it. And then the previous owner said, well, that's too aggressive. And what happens, I think some other people can comment on this too, right? If you've ever had experience with the different clutches, I think when you have a stage 3 clutch, they don't recommend doing that for the street. You're going into a track territory where the car is going to be kind of difficult to drive. And I've had one of my friends back in the day with a very race style clutch, and he was telling me all of the strange things about it, right? I think it may be some noise that it could make in certain circumstances, and how you had to let the clutch out, and what you can't really do with the clutch, maybe like slippage. I think the clutch tends not to have slips, so that means you can't do anything. I feel like I drove the car, or at least moved it, and I felt the clutch, and I was like, well, whatever, it's got a race clutch in it. So I was like, it's not like it has to drive like a regular car. That was just me commenting to my friend when he was like telling me, oh, drive the car this way with the clutch. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll race the clutch to move it to park the car. You know what I mean? Like it, I was like, whatever. It's not my car. It's not my clutch. And then all the while I'm thinking, okay, I'm gaining experience. I've also had another experience with another race clutch too. And it is kind of like that. I guess the race clutches are much more on or off, where it's either engaged and locked, or it's disengaged and unlocked, and you don't get the slippage that you're desiring for just moving the car, for parking the car, or taking the car out to wash it or whatever, right? Anyway, that's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me. So I'm looking forward to getting the car back. And I think the next video would be when I get the car functioning and working. There's going to be a video for that, probably, because I still need to throw the front bumper on. So if that all goes well, that would be another video, and then I'll have the car fixed and then the bumper on, and to make it look like a car from the front. Doesn't look like a car because the front is removed right now. And then what else? Yeah, so then I'll have the car, and then I'll be able to drive it, and there's some stuff that needs to be done. The rear tint is horrendous. Today I was driving, right, and I'm looking in the rear view mirror, and it looks like a purple monster back there. It is this ugly, cheap, low-grade tint that is bubbling and lifting. So the tint is horrible, and I want to have it removed. My only reservation and caution about that is that they have to be careful not to damage the heater lines. There are like these metal or whatever, these wires in the glass to do the defrosting window heater. So I don't want the defrost to break, because it works now, as I verified. So I don't know if I need to go to the Nissan dealer to see if they can take that off carefully, or talk to a tint expert, or I can ask my mechanic if he knows a guy who does that kind of stuff. So there's a few ways to go about that. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Make sure you like, dislike, subscribe to me if you're not. Only 8% of people subscribe to the videos historically on YouTube. There is 92% of people watching the videos that are not subscribed. That's almost everyone. And, I'm trying to bring good quality videos and stories in terms of the Nissan 350Z journey. And so throw the comments down there. We'll catch you on the next video. Bye.